Coming up on Bridge City News, ballots are being collected to determine who the new leader of the Conservative Party of Canada will be. A peaceful protest took place at Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Newdorf's office today. We will explain why. And we hear from Lethbridge Mayor Chris Spearman, who explains why we may be seeing a new bylaw making mask wearing mandatory in all Lethbridge public facilities.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. A province-wide protest took place earlier today at various UCP constituency offices across Alberta. It was organized by concerned parents and teachers as kids get ready to head back to school next month. As video journalist Naveen Day explains, the main focus was on class size to help protect students and teachers from the novel coronavirus.
Parents, grandparents, teachers, and concerned citizens gathered outside MLA Nathan Newdorf's constituency this morning to voice their concerns in a province-wide protest against the UCP's back-to-school plan.
We all know that what keeps us safe is small gatherings, capping classroom sizes to 15. We must protect our teachers. There's no funding for PPE. There's no funding to rehire all the educational assistants that have been fired.
He's a 6-year-old. He's not good at keeping his hands to himself. He is not good at staying far away from people. It's just, you can't expect that out of kids his age.
In attendance at the protest was Lethbridge West MLA Shannon Phillips. She says even though she is sending her children to school in the fall, it is not a sign of her approval of the plan.
That does not at all reduce my criticisms of this incompetent education minister, this utter moral abdication of responsibility on the part of Premier Kenney and his cabinet, in particular his finance minister.
Alberta Minister of Education Adriana LaGrange responded to criticism in a written statement. She says it is disappointing voices on social media and in the opposition continue to politicize the decisions made by nonpartisan medical experts. We will continue to work with Dr. Hinshaw and our education system and will adjust our guidelines as necessary. Neither Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Newdorf or his staff were available for comment. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
Our province's top doctor says her children will return to school next month, but every parent will have to weigh what is right for their family. Dr. Dina Henshaw says she decided the value of in-school learning outweighs the risks to her family. She says, however, there's no wrong decision when it comes to in-school or online learning. Her comments come after the Alberta Teachers Association called on the UCP to delay the start of the school year until after Labor Day and do more to lessen the risk of spreading COVID-19. The provincial government announced that there have been 144 new cases of COVID-19 over the past 24 hours. In total, there are 1,144 active cases across the province, including 28 here in the South Zone. So far, 11,374 Albertans have recovered from the virus. There have also been 230 deaths related to the novel coronavirus. Across the country, there have been 9,062 deaths, but also 111,000 people have recovered from COVID-19. Canada currently has 13,000 active cases. The Alberta government announced today that universities and colleges will be receiving a financial boost to help with infrastructure upgrades. The $98 million will be used to restore learning spaces and upgrade mechanical and electrical systems. $20 million will go to the University of Lethbridge to upgrade the district heating and cooling centre, which will help to improve the campus's energy efficiency and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Lethbridge College, meanwhile, will also receive $3.35 million to upgrade mechanical systems and to replace lighting and ceiling fixtures. The province says the funding for the post-secondary institutions will also create around 533 full-time jobs. An important council meeting will take place on Monday in Lethbridge. City Council will have the third reading of a temporary bylaw making masks mandatory at all indoor public facilities and not just those run by the city. Lethbridge Mayor Chris Spearman says even though there's no longer a state of emergency in Lethbridge, he feels the bylaw is important to protect everyone in our city from the novel coronavirus.
So what's happened is the numbers have gone up, the numbers have come down, but there's some things that will be changing very shortly. We'll have children going back to school or students going back to school. And of course, as we go into the fall, it's going to get busier and busier in our retail areas. So as we approach the Christmas period, it's going to be very difficult to socially distance. So AHS has told us what we don't want to have and what they wouldn't advise us to do is have a bylaw that applies this week and then not next week, and then it applies the following week. Be consistent.
Catch the full interview with Lethbridge Mayor Chris Spearman, who will also discuss how Lethbridge is doing in the battle against the opioid crisis. That's coming up after business news. Donald and Donna Bladen received an alert from their alarm company and said they had to race home from work to find their house in flames on Tuesday. BCN's Loris Alexander spoke with the Bladen family on why they still feel God's hand upon their lives.
Very chaotic, very emotional.
That's how Major Donald Bladen describes the last few days. But despite the circumstances, the Salvation Army pastor says he's a man of faith. He believes divine intervention was at play.
I wake up in the morning and, my wife and I get ready and we take Sophie, out for a little bit of a break, and she comes back in and she's a little different. She's a little more excited. She's a little more bouncy, and she's sort of dancing around my legs and running up and down the stairs from the door that we exit and back to us. And, I got this sense about me that she wants to go with me today. She wants to go to work.
And off to work Sophie went, a very rare occasion. Then, a phone call no family ever wants to receive.
A little after 2:30 in the afternoon, I get a call from the alarm company, and I'm told something to the effect that there are houses or dwellings or something on fire in my neighborhood. Now, I may want to check that out.
As Bladen stood before his house engulfed in flames, he came to an indisputable realization.
I'm holding Sophie, and my wife is standing beside me, and everything that matters sort of sums up in that moment, right? There's lots of other things that matter, but you can't replace life. And so, all at the same time, I'm saying these silent prayers, thanking God for his provision. I'm trying to figure out how all of this happened and why Sophie's in my arms, because pretty much every other day, she's on the couch in the living room waiting for us to get home.
In closing, Bladen says the one truth that makes this devastation easier to digest is
God with us. That's what it comes down to. And so he's with us in many ways, and I'm a pastor and we can theologize about that all we want for a long time, but to me that's what summarizes my experience. God is with me.
For Bridge City News, I'm Loris Alexander.
Every veteran has a story. The Last Post Fund has been volunteering their time to visit cemeteries around the country to try and find unmarked graves of veterans. BCN's Micah Quinn has that story.
Volunteers from the Last Post Fund have been dedicating their time to help give veterans the honor they deserve after death.
So we have a series of volunteers that spread across the country in each province, and we look for gaps between field headstones and specifically in the fields of honor. Some fields of honor have been closed because they're full on paper, but when you walk on the ground, you'll see gaps between the stones, and we can fill those gaps by identifying who's there and placing a military-style marker.
The impact this has on families is immense.
Family reaction has been amazing in some instances, and I do get calls from people saying, my uncle, my father's grave has not been marked, and can you help?
The stories are what makes this work worth it, says Miller.
And in Lethbridge, there's one particular warrior, George Strangling Wolf. He's buried right near the flame in the field of honor. And I was able to bump into a relative of his who didn't know where he was buried. I indicated where it was. And on Remembrance Day, he wanted to come honor his family member. And after I spoke at the Blood Tribe Standoff Remembrance Day service, and that evening, I come to pay my own respects, and there was a set of footprints leading right to George's grave, so I know the family honored his relatives.
Sugimoto says she is proud of what the Last Post Fund is doing.
Well, I think that people who served in the armed forces and gave everything really deserve to be recognized and acknowledged by the country for what they did.
Miller says there's a great need for volunteers for the Last Post Fund, and you can call their number or visit their website for more information. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Exhibition Park is playing host to the first ever drive-through food truck festival as part of Whoop Up Days. Over 15 food trucks made their way to the park, and a variety of food was served up from the truck to the vehicle. The Waffle Wagon had some especially tasty treats to serve to the people of Lethbridge.
So we basically offer one kind of Belgian waffles to just bring a little bit of our own heritage to Canada, and this today to Lethbridge. We offer stuffed waffles, we call them the waffle paninis, and we also offer waffles with toppings. Toppings can be like strawberries, whipped cream, bananas, apple pie filling. But the drive-thru has been fun. I must say it's something different, and it's fun to serve people like in their cars, and everybody reacts a little bit different, and it's nice. It's nice to do.
Exhibition Park staff are asking foodgoers to enter through the south parking lot to get inside. What was intended to be lighthearted satire has sparked racial tension in our community. The Lethbridge-based clothing line White and Privileged has decided to close down after criticism the clothing line had a racist message. The company used shock advertising in the form of controversial hashtags to trigger people's attention. Owner Bo Zarico says many people are unhappy because they're taking it too seriously.
I don't enjoy being called white and privileged. To me, that's an insult. I never grew up privileged. Myself lived in the coulees for months and months. Homeless when I was younger, obviously. People are like, oh, white privilege dude. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't recall getting, having any sort of extra privilege than anybody else does. It wasn't even meant to be a big thing. It was just kind of like, dump a few $1,000s in, whatever, have a little bit of fun. And, I'd walk around with it and most people would laugh. Most of the clothing I've actually sold hasn't went to white people at all. But, because they think it's funny too. And a lot of people on both sides of the fence think it's hilarious. But it's not, it wasn't created to be racist or derogatory in any sort of way. And apparently a lot of people feel that it is.
After receiving repeated death threats, Zarico decided to delete his Facebook page and his website. Lethbridge County and the town of Nobleford have created a new partnership. The two regions have signed their first ever intermunicipal collaboration framework and recreation agreement. The ICF agreement will provide recreation for Alberta's fastest growing town. BCN's Ainsley O'Reilly has the details.
Lethbridge County and Nobleford have a strong partnership. From paving the North Highway to adding a roundabout, Mayor Don McDowell appreciates their support.
You name it, the county has been there. They've just been a great partner.
The town will take the $17,000 per year funds from the county, match it with municipal funds, and partner with societies in the community to obtain federal and provincial grants.
We don't spend any of our tax revenue on recreation. We haven't done it since 2004, and yet we've had just about $2 million worth of new recreation projects in Nobleford. So thank you, County of Lethbridge taxpayers, for your money.
Between 2001 and 2019, the population of Nobleford has doubled. Many residents are young families, so there's a clear need for amenities and recreation services like the spray park right behind me.
Anything that's recreation, the county has participated in to some degree financially. So we appreciate that. We work together on building these things because we all use them.
We've got climbing walls, we've got a skate park, we've got the spray park. The money will be used in all of those ventures. It's a busy community. There's a lot of things happen on a daily basis in Nobleford.
For Bridge City News, I'm Ainsley O'Reilly.
13 employees who were sent home from a pork facility in Red Deer after a coworker tested positive for the novel coronavirus are all in the clear. All 13 tested negative and returned to work, and the one woman who became ill is still in isolation. Now, the one positive case confirmed last Friday was Ollie Mill's first COVID-19 case at the plant, which employs around 1,600 people. Company officials said Alberta Health toured the facility and are satisfied with the prevention measures that are currently in place. After only 7 months, Saskatchewan has already recorded its most overdose deaths in a decade. The Saskatchewan Coroner's Service has confirmed 40 people have died from drug toxicity deaths since January 1st. The report also shows 139 deaths are suspected to have been caused by drug toxicity. Dangerous synthetic opioids such as fentanyl and carfentanil have also been linked to 28 deaths so far this year. BC fire officials say fighting a massive wildfire in the South Okanagan has been challenging for crews because of the steep and rocky terrain. Firefighters, heavy equipment, and helicopters have been working to contain the blaze near Penticton. There are more than 100 wildfires burning in BC, and evacuation alerts remain in place for close to 4,000 property owners. The largest blaze east of Skaha Lake in Penticton remains around 2,000 hectares in size. The federal Conservative leadership race ended today with all ballots returning to the party by 5 o'clock Eastern Time. Close to 150,000 ballots were received, and the winner of the 4 candidates will be announced on Sunday night. Leslyn Lewis, Aaron O'Toole, Peter MacKay, and Derek Sloan are all vying for the top job. Current leader Andrew Scheer announced last December that he would resign once his successor was chosen. The leadership race saw more people to try and make the cut, but the $300,000 entry fee and 3,000 signatures needed was too high a barrier for them to overcome. The Los Angeles Superior Court has ruled that John MacArthur and his Grace Community Church cannot be held in contempt of court for holding indoor church services. The services were held in defiance of California state orders, a charge sought by LA County. The LA County Superior Court said there is no court order prohibiting Pastor MacArthur and his congregation from holding indoor worship services in Sun Valley, California. The church was targeted by the county, which made repeated attempts to shut down the non-denominational evangelical megachurch. MacArthur and the Grace Community Church are now suing the county and the state of California for attempting to shut down their worship under COVID-related orders that violate the state's constitution. If you're a Spider-Man fan, some good news. Not one, but 2 Spider-Man movies are playing at the Mill this weekend. With more, here's Len Benning with a Movie Mill Minute.
With their partners away serving in Afghanistan, Military Wives is a film about a group of women who form a choir, and let me assure you, they are no good at all. However, things progress rapidly, and they end up with a fantastic performance for the Queen herself.
That was like the incantations of a bunch of witches. Bit dramatic.
Tom Holland plays the role of Peter Parker, of course known as Spider-Man, in Homecoming, where he's a high school kid in New York City. He faces new villains. Michael Keaton and Robert Downey Jr. also star in this action picture.
Don't mess with me, because I will kill you and everybody you love.
Tom Holland is back as Peter Parker in Spider-Man Far From Home. He's on a high school trip to Europe where he encounters 4 elemental monsters.
I just always feel like I'm putting my friends in danger. The world needs the next Iron Man.
Next up, we have Sonic the Hedgehog, a family-friendly film that follows the misadventures of this fun little blue creature on planet Earth and his best friend, Tom Wachowski, played by James Marsden.
That was an illegal left, by the way.
Oh, this one is cute. Let's keep him.
Oh, come on!
You've got car insurance, right?
Why would you throw your life away for this silly little alien?
Good time.
He's my friend.
Let's go! This is my power. And I'm using it to protect my friends.
Fantastic movies playing at the Mill once again. We had lots of sunshine and warm temperatures again today. A sunny skies also on deck for the weekend. Full weather details are coming up. A great-looking weekend is shaping up so far. Jeanette Rocher is here now with a complete look at the weather forecast. Jeanette, it should be a pleasant evening and a weekend for a barbecue.
Yeah, absolutely. Break out the steaks and the burgers and fire up the grill because it's a perfect time to eat outside. Or you could just head down to Exhibition Park and go to one of the food trucks. Anything as long as you're outside. So this evening is going to be lovely. Overnight low of 13 degrees. We could see a bit of a southeast wind gusting to 50 at times, but then tapering off overnight. Mainly clear skies. And then as we get into tomorrow as well, sunny. 28 degrees is the high for our Saturday. And then as we look into the rest of the weekend and into the week beyond, we are seeing the most perfect forecast. Look at this. So the rest of our weekend, Sunday, 28 degrees and sunshine. Sunny skies all through the next week or so. 27 on Monday, 28 again on Tuesday, and 25 degrees for both Wednesday and Thursday under clear skies. So perfect weather. According to the Almanac, 25 is our average for this time of year. We've been quite a bit above that lately. Overnight lows are about 10 degrees. That's the average. The high temperature on this day was back in 1969. It was 35 degrees. And the low temperature was in 1992, and it was 0. The sun rose this morning at 6:31 a.m. And tonight our sunset will be this evening at 8:37 p.m. So giving us about 14 hours of daylight. Not too bad. So let's take a look what's happening across the country tomorrow on Saturday. So Victoria, lots of sunshine tomorrow, 20 degrees. Vancouver was actually under a severe thunderstorm watch this evening. Not so much for tomorrow. That's going to clear up, mix of sun and cloud tomorrow, 21 degrees. Calgary could see a chance of showers tomorrow, 23. Pretty even weather as well in Edmonton with a mix of sun and clouds. Saskatoon could see a chance of a thunderstorm. 27 is their high. 30 the high in Regina under sunny skies. Winnipeg was the hot spot in Canada today. Tomorrow they're going to be sitting at 25 degrees. They were at 30 today under a mix of sun and cloud. 30 degrees tomorrow expected in Toronto with a mix of sun and cloud. Chance of showers and thunderstorms expected in Ottawa tomorrow. 26 the high. 25 is the high tomorrow for Montreal. And then as we look into the Maritimes here, Fredericton could see some showers. 24 is the high. Mainly sunny skies for Charlottetown with 23 sitting at their high. Halifax could see a risk of thunderstorms as well and some fog patches. 22 is the high. St. John's, Newfoundland could see fog patches as well and a chance of showers with a mix of sun and cloud with a high of 23 for their Saturday. There you go. That is your forecast.
TD Bank reached a settlement with U.S. regulators following an investigation into its marketing and sales practices related to its overdraft services. The U.S. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau found the bank's actions constituted deceptive and abusive acts. It is requiring TD to pay $97 million in restitution to close to 1.5 million customers and a civic penalty of $25 million. The Bureau said TD charged overdraft fees for ATM and one-time debit card transactions without getting consent of new checking account customers. The bank also charged an overdraft fee for debit card advances despite marketing their service as free. The bank says it did not admit to any wrongdoing under the settlement and had a clear process to secure proper consent when providing services. Retail sales topped their pre-pandemic levels for the first time last month, soaring 23.7% to $53 billion in Canada. Stats Canada revised its reading for May to show a gain of 21.2%. That's up from an earlier estimate of 18.7%. Despite the large gains, the trend of the 2 months is not expected to continue. Stats Canada says early estimates suggest retail sales increased by just 0.7% in July. Leading economists say for the rest of the year, we could see a very bumpy economic road ahead. Amazon's retail chief, Jeff Wilke, who helped the company transform itself from an online bookstore into a global juggernaut, is retiring early next year. The 53-year-old has been at Amazon for more than 20 years and was regarded as a potential successor to founder and CEO Jeff Bezos. He will be replaced by Dave Clark, who runs the company's warehouses and delivery network. If you can put up with all of the restrictions, movie buffs were back in business today. Cineplex says all of its theaters and entertainment centers are open again. The Toronto-based movie exhibitor says 164 theaters, close to 1,700 screens, and 10 entertainment complexes will be in operation. Cineplex has gradually been reopening its locations over the past few weeks following closures related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 88 points on the day to finish at 16,517. The Dow was down 190 points to 27,930. The S&P 500 was up 11 points to 3397. The Nasdaq was up 46 points to 11,311. Oil was down 57 cents to 42.25 per barrel. Natural gas was up 9 cents to 2.44. Gold was down 6.79 to 19.40.48 an ounce. And silver was down 46 cents to 26.79 an ounce. Wheat is at $213 per metric ton, barley's at $206, canola's at $4.54, and corn is at $232 per metric ton. Live cattle were down $1.23 to $108.55, feeder cattle were down 98 cents to $144.85, and lean hogs were down 93 cents to $54.25. The Canadian dollar was up slightly on the day to 75.89 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, an important council meeting will take place Monday in Lethbridge. City Council will have the third and final reading of a temporary bylaw making masks mandatory at all indoor public facilities and not just those run by the city. Lethbridge Mayor Chris Spearman says even though there's no longer a state of emergency in our city, he feels the bylaw is important to protect everyone from the novel coronavirus. If passed, the bylaw would potentially come into effect early next month, and the fine for not wearing a mask would be $100. The persecution of Christians is getting worse in many parts of the world, including in Asia. Greg Musselman with the Voice of the Martyrs will have details coming up next in an interview with BCN's Jeanette Rocher. But first, here's a look what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Come out, enjoy the beautiful weather, and find a great deal or two. The YQL Summer Trunk Show Open Air Market is taking place Saturday, August 22nd from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the NMAX Center parking lot. This is a one-stop shopping event with dozens of local businesses taking part. Get to know your city and take part in the Lethbridge Scavenger Hunt. Download the Let's Roam Scavenger Hunt app, lace up your walking shoes, and head out with family to discover the best landmarks in Lethbridge. Put your navigation skills to the test while enjoying the journey at your own pace. No reservations, no tour guides, and fun for all ages. Visit letsroam.com/scavenger hunt. Get out and explore nature. The Helen Schuler Nature Center is offering guided 1-hour field trips for all ages. Visit lethbridge.ca/things to do. Click on Nature Center and follow the events page, where you'll find a list of featured tours that will introduce you to amazing plants and animals found right here in Lethbridge. Cost is $25. Book online for your tour today. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
Canada is a country where Canadians, for the most part, are able to live out whichever faith they practice and feel safe doing so. But imagine living in a country where your faith could cost you everything, including your family, or in some cases, even your own life. Our guest today is Greg Musselman with the Voice of the Martyrs Canada. He joins me today from Edmonton. Greg, welcome back to our program. So good to have you.
Good to be here, and nice to be with you, Jeanette.
All right. Now, Greg, you've traveled all around the world with your ministry, and you've seen all kinds of things and have spoken with all kinds of people, including those who have been persecuted for living out their faith. Now, if we turn our attention to Nigeria for just a moment, the numbers are staggering, aren't they? More than 600 people have been killed this year alone in Nigeria for practicing Christianity.
Yeah, it's a tragic situation, and I've just been interviewing a fellow from Nigeria, one of the leaders there. Yunusa is his name, and he's with a ministry called Christian Solidarity Worldwide Nigeria, and we partner with the Voice of the Martyrs with him. And hearing what's going on currently. I mean, with the Voice of the Martyrs, we have our what's called Persecution and Prayer Alert that comes out every week. And there's always something about Nigeria. We found that it's unbelievable, really. When you hear like large statistics, more than 30,000 killed since 2009, 620 or more that we know of anyway, have been killed already this year. When you start to look at it from the individual families, so a man named Jonathan Yakubu, his wife, and 3 young children were all killed. And then they had a massive funeral. They dig this big hole, and you see all these people, our brothers and sisters in Christ, and it breaks your heart. And, as you mentioned, I've traveled all over the world, but Nigeria is probably the country when I go there, when I document the stories of persecution and I come back, it's the one that usually hits me the hardest, because talking to people that have had limbs, taken off, there's scars, there's family members have been killed. We're trying to help them, the widows especially, and with the orphans, but it's a situation that is so brutal, and it doesn't look like it's going to get any better. And, so as I was talking to Yunusa, I said, well, if there's no hope that the government's going to, get in here and at least prevent some of this from happening, what's the hope? And his hope is in Jesus, that this side of eternity, things are pretty terrible, but there's something to look forward to. That's when we die. And that's really has to be presented before the people of Nigeria to make sure that they have their hope in Christ.
What a tragic situation they are facing over there. So, that just begs the question then, is Christianity growing or shrinking in numbers there with this persecution, or is it too early to tell right now with all of that?
Yeah, well, I think, in general, Africa has seen quite an explosion in Christianity. And we take a country like Nigeria, it's the most populous African nation, and the southern part of the country, for the most part, is predominantly Christian. The northern part of Nigeria is predominantly Muslim. And then you've got in the center part called Plateau State, a city called Jos, and many missionaries that came from Canada, America, and other places, that's where they were. It was kind of the launching point to bring Christ into the northern part of Nigeria. But what has happened is the militant Islamists have determined in their mind they are going to turn Nigeria into an Islamic state and under strict Sharia law. And so with that, the Christians that are there, and there's significant numbers of Christians that are in northern Nigeria as well. There's churches there and there's communities like this particular one that I was talking about earlier, Gonan Rogo. It is a place that is a Baptist village, and there's a big Baptist church, and all the people that were recently killed were from that church. So there are areas and pockets where there are Christians. But these Islamists, like the Boko Haram, who are listed as the second most terrorist group in the world, and then the Fulani herdsmen, they're number 4. So you got both these groups working in northern Nigeria. So there's a lot of persecution. Yet, to answer your question, is Christianity growing in Nigeria? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Now, you're saying how dangerous the north was. So there's pockets of the south that are a little bit more safe than in Nigeria?
Yeah, there is. We don't hear a lot of persecution, say in Lagos and some of the larger cities. I mean, there's still things that are going on, and that can be more of a cultural situation. Let's say a family is Muslim, they're living in the south, and family members become Christians. They could be killed, but they're more like being ostracized or losing their jobs, that kind of thing. But definitely there are, people that are coming into relationship with Jesus in the south, but because, again, there's not the persecution. And unfortunately, in the southern part of Nigeria, there's some pretty interesting theologies like the prosperity gospel, that kind of thing that, they're trying to follow the American way. And there's some things about the church that are a little bit odd. I found one of the things that was really interesting in like Plateau State in the center part, that's where we were. And then we were going into the north and doing interviews. And I remember one particular day I had interviewed a number of people. One guy told me the story of how his father and a number of the men in his church were driven by the Islamists into the building, and they killed them all. And he got cut and shot, and he had to pretend he was dead. Bukhar Samson is his name, and eventually became the pastor of that church. But I was, he was telling me the story, and I videoed it. In fact, I wrote about him in my book, and I seen the scars, and then talked to others that had been just through this brutality, and we've met dozens of children and orphans as a result of the persecution, especially in the north, that have come to the south. And then I was in this hotel, and I heard the music, and it was worship. And I go, I love African worship. And I'm in there, and then they put on the message, which was on video, and it was a prosperity message about getting a better car and a better life. And I'm going, man, and just down the road, people are dying for Jesus. So they have the same issues and the same challenges, Jeanette, as we do. But yet in the middle of all that, God is working, and some say in spite of persecution, but I think a lot of the time people have to make a decision. Either you're in the kingdom fully, both feet in, or you're not so sure. And of course, God loves us no matter where we're at, but it does cause people to really, consider the cost, which we're all supposed to do when we follow Jesus.
Mm-hmm. That's fascinating. And of course, speaking of dangerous countries to practice your faith, North Korea and Iran are certainly up there as far as most dangerous places to practice Christianity, right? So how is the underground church doing in North Korea?
Well, that's always a very interesting question, because for many years, our friends at Open Doors, another ministry that works with persecuted Christians, have the World Watch List. And North Korea, year after year after year, more than a decade, have been on the top of that list. Now, Afghanistan is close to that. But in North Korea, because you've got what's called the Juche system, where it's kind of the worship of the Kim family, and it's basically a ripoff of the Bible. And Christianity, of course, exposes the falseness of Juche. So if you're caught with a Bible, you can be put in a concentration camp. You could be killed. And not only you, but your family members. They're so paranoid of Christianity. I mean, interestingly enough, 100 years ago, North Korea was actually stronger than South Korea. Then the war came along, and then there was the split. South Korea now has 4 of the 5 largest churches in the world. And then just across that border, just the demilitarized zone there in between North and South is you can be killed for having a Bible or for meeting. But the interesting thing is that the church still is growing. It's growing at a faster rate percentage-wise than here in North America. Now, they can't meet publicly. They have their show churches there in Pyongyang, but it's controlled. They can't openly meet. And so they're meeting in their homes, and they have to be very careful even to tell their children if they're Christians, because if their children say something at school, the children come home and mom and dad are gone. They are put in a concentration camp, never to be seen again, or they could even be executed. I mean, that's how serious it is. And yet they're meeting in their homes. And what's kind of an interesting thing is I was talking to Eric Foley, and we work with him. He's with Voice of the Martyrs Korea in Seoul, and I've had opportunity to be there and to meet North Korean Christians who are absolutely amazing people. But I asked him, well, how is the COVID-19 and the shutdown, affecting the North Korean Christians? And he said, well, it's actually, for them, it's been a positive, because they have to work long, long days, have very little time at home to study the Bible, and they have to, again, doing this in secret. But because of the shutdown, they've been put into their homes, and the government officials don't want to go near them. And so they've been able to take time of studying the Bible in worship. And then with Voice of the Martyrs Korea out of Seoul, we broadcast into their, the Bible and, commentaries and encouraging the believers there. And so for them, this time has been actually in some ways positive. Now, when people say, well, how many Christians are in North Korea? And, it's really hard to know the numbers on these things, because what happens is so many of them have been executed, have been imprisoned, but it's still growing. So maybe 100,000 of Christians there, and maybe 30,000 of those would be in concentration camps. But people are coming to know the Lord. And again, getting numbers in such a closed society is very difficult. But I can tell you, the ones that are there are very determined. And when I was talking with Eric the other day, I said, well, how can we pray for Christians in North Korea? What should I tell my Canadian believing friends? And he said, it's interesting that he had asked that question of a North Korean leader many years ago. And this North Korean leader said to him, what, pray for us? We pray for you.
Now, Greg, you'd mentioned the pandemic. So now you also had mentioned to me earlier that you were supposed to travel to Turkey to speak with some Iranian Christians before this whole pandemic arose, right, for COVID-19. So maybe talk really quickly, in the amount of time we have left, about what you were going to do there.
Yeah, we were going to go to Turkey, the southern part, and I was actually going to be doing a trip to Israel with 100 Huntley Street. And that trip got shut down because we had to quarantine for 14 days, and the trip was 10 days. So I'm not a mathematician, but those numbers didn't add up. And then because I was in the neighborhood, I was going to travel with one of our partners that we work with. He's an Iranian, lives in Canada, and to bring aid to Christian refugees from Iran, and they were getting into Turkey. Now, I have been there in the past in Turkey and have met with Iranian Christians who have left the country because of the unemployment and the problems and the oppression and the rest of it. And so they have, got into Turkey. So we were going to go there and bring them food and aid and, and get their stories and find other ways in which we can help them. I know in one case, a family there, two of their children both have severe medical issues. And so Voice of the Martyrs Canada has been helping them. And, just to talk to them, to find out what's going on and how we can help them. Of course, everything got shut down. And, of course, we're concerned because the people that we're responsible for, that we feel responsibility for, trying to get the funds there. But I found, Jeanette, is that the Canadian people that support Voice of the Martyrs have not held back their giving. In fact, they're really wanting us to help persecuted Christians, because whether it's, in Turkey or in other places, especially Pakistan, India, Christian refugees from Syria that are in Lebanon, we're hearing so many cases that the Christians are not getting the food and the supplies that other people are, because they are not, say, Muslim, they're not Hindu, whatever the majority religion is. And so they're paying a huge price. And we've heard of Christians that in Pakistan, as an example, that are starving to death and are dying because they can't get food. If they would renounce Jesus, they can have food. But many of them would say, I'd rather die than deny Jesus. I mean, and of course others would, maybe they would say, well, I need food. I need to feed my kids. I'll just say I'm a Muslim, but in my heart, I'm for Jesus. So, I mean, God is a God of mercy, but these are, there's some difficult situations. In fact, we're going to have a conference call this week with a number of other leaders, well, actually next week, from around the world, that how the COVID-19 is affecting persecuted Christians, and ways that as international groups that work with persecuted Christians to help them get food.
Makes you realize how much we really take our freedoms for granted over here when you look at what the rest of the world is going through, what many people are going through. Greg, thank you so much for joining me today. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to be on the show, and it was nice talking to you today, Jeanette.
A very important City Council meeting will be taking place next Monday at Lethbridge City Hall. Council is looking at a third reading of a temporary bylaw making mask wearing mandatory in all public facilities and not just those run by the city. To talk more about it is Lethbridge Mayor Chris Spearman. Welcome back to BCN, Mayor.
How are you today, Hal? Happy to be here.
Yes, thank you so much, Chris. Now, the AHS says there are no new active cases in the South Zone and 12 active cases in our city in total. Now, it appears as though what we're currently doing is flattening the curve, so why go to this extreme? And we're not even under a state of emergency here in our city.
So what's happened is the numbers have gone up, the numbers have come down, but there's some things that will be changing very shortly. We'll have children going back to school or students going back to school. And of course, as we go into the fall, it's going to get busier and busier in our retail areas. So as we approach the Christmas period, it's going to be very difficult to socially distance. So AHS has told us what we don't want to have, and what they wouldn't advise us to do, is have a bylaw that applies this week and then not next week, and then it applies the following week. Be consistent, and we believe that keeping people safe is something we should be looking at. It's a balance between people's rights to liberty. That's what the messages we have been getting. People believe they're being dictated to, and the other half of the population believes it's important to try and keep each other safe. So we're trying to walk that balance and make sure that we pass a bylaw which is helpful in keeping our community safe in total.
How much pushback have you really received from residents about being told to have to wear these masks at all indoor public facilities?
Not a lot of pushback. So I would say it's about 50-50. There are people who believe that it's important to stay safe and keep each other safe, and there are other people that are saying it's not necessary. But each councillor will evaluate the information we've all received, and we'll be voting on Monday. First two readings have passed. There might be some amendments to the bylaw before it passes. So every councillor has a right to put forward amendments based on the feedback we have heard. So we've heard from religious communities saying that the person delivering the sermons, leading the service, should, if they're more than 2 meters away from the congregation, do they have to wear a mask? So we'll have to see how that works out. There may be different resolutions coming forward to amend it based on the feedback we have heard from the population.
Who would some of the other exceptions be as well? Maybe those with underlying health conditions, and maybe children under the age of 2?
Underlying health conditions and minimum age is already specified in the bylaw.
Now, Council has also discussed making this bylaw mandatory until the end of the year. When would we actually see it kick in?
As soon as the bylaw is passed. So I would say practically in September. But the end of the year period, it would be after the Christmas rush, the retail period. How do we keep our economy safe and our businesses open if there is a bit of a bump up? And we don't want to react to every fluctuation, every announcement, but create some conditions that create predictability and limit the spread.
So I guess it all depends upon how it's going with flattening the curve, whether or not you're going to decide to extend it, correct?
We'll see what happens. There are predictions that there will be a second wave in the fall, and we want to be prepared for that second wave.
Now, Chris, how much is the fine if somebody's caught not wearing a mask indoors at a public space? And who would enforce this fine?
The fine is $100, and it would be enforced by police or by law enforcement officers. Uh, our focus is going to be on education.
I'm just wondering if some of the police officers say to you, you know what, Chris, I'm too busy, taking down drug dealers and the serious crime in my city to write a citation to a little old lady, in a building who's not wearing a mask. Have you had pushback from maybe the police as well, saying, come on, this is ridiculous?
None at all, because we've taken the approach that we're not going to take a hard line on enforcement. We're going to focus on education.
Now let's discuss how the province allowed another phase, which includes people being able to eat in restaurants again, another phase of the economy reopening. I went to the Water Tower Grill recently, enjoyed some great food, saw a wonderful view. Now some would ask, why are restaurants open again? Is there no COVID-19 when you're eating food?
Well, I'm not the health expert. The province has made those decisions. I think what they're trying to do is make sure that businesses stay viable, and the restaurant and entertaining sector of the economy has been the one that's been hardest hit by COVID.
Now, with the COVID-19 pandemic, many have decided to just stay right here at home, be a tourist in your own town, have a staycation, spend their money right here at home. Sadly, there's no Whoop Up Days this year. Obviously, that was canceled, but more facilities are slowly reopening, including the Henderson Pool, which is open again.
Yes. So, and they're open under different rules. So you have to make appointments to go to Henderson. You have to go already in your swimsuit. Basically, physical distancing has to be maintained. So the rules are different than prior to COVID-19. The same with the entertainment sector. Usually where you're going to a restaurant, you're having to maintain spacing between tables. There's usually a table for use and then a gap, and then a table for use and a gap. So those restaurants aren't as full as they once were. The volume of service is not what it once was. But some cash flow is better than no cash flow.
Well, I was just thinking as well of the Corps Van Ray YMCA when I'm working out there as well. You have to arrive in your workout gear and leave in your workout gear because the lockers are not open right now. Now, you mentioned that there would not be a tax increase during the COVID-19 pandemic, but I received a note with my property taxes went up $46 a month. So does that mean the city increased the value of my property as kind of a workaround to try and get more money out of me?
Nope. The value of the assessments did not go up, but the value of individual assessments within the city could fluctuate. If you live in an area where house prices are rising, and in an older area, house prices might be falling, we have to follow the Municipal Government Act when it comes to assessments. So assessments are based on market values, and they're tied to home sales in the last 12 months. So if the homes in your area have been selling at above assessed values in the last 12 months, and the homes in another area have been declining in value versus their assessed values, there is that kind of fluctuation. But in total, we're not collecting any more taxes than we did the year prior.
Now, a new mobile supervised consumption site truck is operating by the Lethbridge Soup Kitchen now. Has the province indicated to you through permits how long it'll actually be set up there?
No, they have asked us if it meets the regulations, and it does. So they can have a mobile unit there. Again, these programs are federally approved and provincially funded, and all we look at is the zoning issue.
Some business owners have asked me, do we know where this mobile SCS truck will be moving to next? Do you know? Has the province given you kind of an outline or a plan? We're going to the south, the north, the west?
There is no other plan. The concern is to address issues that are arising from the closing of the supervised consumption site. So what we're seeing is people spreading out and using drugs through the community. We're seeing them in city parks, in the river valley. There's more encampments. So that's a challenge we have to keep our eyes on. Basically, we might be seeing some of the problems we had before the supervised consumption site opened, where more use in parks and playgrounds throughout the city and spread across the city. So the idea of providing a similar service at near the homeless shelter, hopefully people will use that service, and we'll have to see if that service is adequate. If it's not adequate for the demand, they may be looking at maybe placing another unit in the same location or in another location where people can easily access it.
Archer said before that they'd be picking up some of the needles through some of their programs that they offered through the SCS, but that's not happening anymore. Chris, who's picking up the needles now?
The city is working with the provincial government. We've been asked to apply for funding to conduct needle cleanup, and we'll work with various community organizations to make sure that we keep the city as safe and clean as we possibly can.
Let's talk about how disappointed you were when you first heard about the misappropriation of $1.6 million tax dollars at Arches. And that these were people who were supposed to be helping our city's most vulnerable. And instead, we heard about unauthorized trips to Portugal, big screen TVs, thousands of gift cards, plus a salary over $340,000.
Well, there's no accountability to the city of Lethbridge. Again, that accountability is to the provincial government. We weren't funding that aspect of the operation, and it is disappointing. The challenge has been that the city of Lethbridge has been asking for services for decades. And since I've been the mayor, we were asking for a detox facility, we were asking for an intox facility, we were asking for supported housing, and we didn't get any of them. And the first thing that got funded was and approved was supervised consumption. So after supervised consumption in September of 2018, an 8-bed detox at the hospital opened. Medicine Hat has an 18-bed detox. Just to give you an example, we had no intox facility. When people were under the influence of substances, our only option was to take them to a jail. They were so this June, an intox facility opened up, but we didn't have any of those services. And we have one of the most severe problems in the province. So the problem hasn't gone away. The facilities are still lacking. We still don't have supported housing. The $11.1 million that was approved and then reapproved, we still haven't built the building. It'll be a year and a half away before it's even constructed. And it will serve approximately 25% of the need. So just to let you know, those problems have not gone away. The underlying problems, we certainly hope that people will transition into rehabilitation and recovery. But until they can get into some of the first steps, until they can get to a detox, until they can get to an intox, unless they can be referred through an existing service that they're accessing, their chances of getting to treatment are very low.
Chris, what is it going to take to keep the drugs out of our city once and for all? The drug dealers and all the opioids, the meth, what is it going to take?
Well, we've always talked about a 4-pillar approach that includes enforcement. We've felt that we needed stronger enforcement resources in the city. We've asked for those. We've wanted the organization based in Calgary that closes down drug houses to be active here in the city of Lethbridge, and our request was not accepted. So we're not able to shut down drug houses effectively. We want to continue to do that. We want to support our Lethbridge Police Services and make sure that enforcement's strong. But we need to make sure that treatment and recovery are active. We want to make sure that we provide the educational resources to deter people from going into drugs. And if people are addicts, we have to find a way to reach out to them and get them connected to services.
The police chief starting at the end of the month, Matizade, have you talked to him about some of the issues and the problems when it comes to drugs here in our city and crime?
I think he's well aware of what he's coming to. I really like his attitude. He's a very personable individual, and I think someone who is who has the experience that he does have with a wide range of policing in a large number of locations. This is a man with about a 40-year career coming to the city of Lethbridge. I think we'll benefit from that diverse experience.
Yeah, he's been with the RCMP for over 30 years there. Now, Chris, the kids will be going back to school soon. What are you hearing from parents? Will they send their children back to school or consider maybe homeschooling in light of the pandemic?
I'm not hearing a lot. I think they're working with the school boards and the schools. I'm impressed with the efforts that our local school boards are putting into making people feel that their programs are going to be effective. I've seen video tours of schools. announcements by the school superintendents basically saying what people can expect when kids go back to school, and recognizing that not everyone will feel comfortable going back to school. So they're providing alternatives. So I think I heard there's numbers, something about between 10 and 20% that want to do homeschooling, at least for the initial period. And others will be going back to school. So it will be very different. And certainly our school systems have a significant challenge ahead of them.
Last time you and I chatted, it was sad because of the fact that many small business owners had to shut down here in Lethbridge in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. So what is the City of Lethbridge doing to help some of the small business owners and maybe even attract more investment and business to our city?
We have an economic recovery committee that meets regularly, and we're looking at the various forms of incentives and supports that can be provided to business. And so the committee is meeting, our subcommittees are meeting basically every week or every other week. And then we get together on Thursdays, share the information. We've been getting input from business organizations, basically how the city can help them. And we're continuing to look at options to make sure the economy stays healthy.
Winter is just around the corner. Will we see the plowing of residential streets, or is that still off the table for now because of potential increase in taxes?
Yep, we will not be adding services. We're doing a two-phase operational review, and we're actually looking at ways to become more efficient, and we'll be looking potentially at shedding services so we can keep taxes low in the future.
Lethbridge Mayor Chris Spearman, thanks a lot for your time today.
It's been a pleasure, Hal. We'll talk to you again next month.
You bet. On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.